So our final speaker, the man, the myth, the guy who is, I'm sure, going to rouse us with his excitement and vigor. Now you're all,
I think
ready.
You actually called me Duty.
I did.
Yes, I have 3 kids. That's pretty funny.
It said duty.
Yeah.
Right, Mr. Theo Schlossnagle.
Thank you. All right. So several people have come up to me and said, Theo, you really put on a fabulous conference, and I should have said, thank you. I did. No, the truth is that all of that happened this year through Robert and a rather large team of people at OmniTI. I really had nothing to do with this conference at all this year, but I've been graced with the closing plenary. Apparently there's mythology involved with it. So the OmniTI team has done a fabulous job. The speaker lineup was fantastic. Of course, my favorite part of the conference always is the hallway track. I didn't know what to say in the closing plenary, but I thought I would take topics from the audience and rant about some of them, and then I would end up with a disaster porn story that's not technical, that unfortunately involves actual porn, just so that you don't fall asleep and you leave on a funny note. The bash thing's pretty funny though, because I heard Tom Daly earlier say it's like Bobby Tables grew up and became a serial killer. So, which was perfect. That was perfect. But anybody have any topics? Any pet peeves? Any technologies suck?
Container subsession.
What's that?
Container subsession.
Containers. Containers are great. It's a shame Linux doesn't have any. So, I mean, that's kind of a problem, right? If you put coffee in a container and it goes all over the fucking table, it's not a container. So, I'm sorry, I come to a limo stage tomorrow and you can understand what a container actually is. So it's kind of frustrating, this whole Docker. I cannot imagine being in the hosting company trying to do multi-tenancy Docker, right? It's just like, you can come, it's multi-tenancy, but you can't wear any clothes. And I'm gonna put you in a very small room with other people. I think, like C groups isn't a bad technology, and the namespaces don't suck. They just don't do that. Oops. So, any others? Docker? That's no more Docker. Back there.
What you said if someone tells you there aren't enough Go programmers, why can't you use Go?
There aren't enough Go programmers? Are those called Go-grammers? As long as we don't have any more programmers. Anything but that. I don't know. I think my biggest problem with Go for a long time was that it wasn't really portable. I mean, it only ran on Linux, which doesn't always run. So there were some challenges there, but I don't know. I mean, a language is a language. It seems like a fine runtime. Suck it up and program and Go if you want to. Just not in PHP. All right. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Security, what? Security experts? I happen to know a lot of security experts. I think that they're a dark and scary group of people. I wouldn't count former chief security officers of large retail organizations as security experts, clearly. But yeah, I don't know. Especially one that was indicted of something for security-related problems. That's a travesty. I don't know, security experts. I mean, if there's one person I would recommend following in the security space who kind of ties me into everything that I want to look at is Dan Kaminsky. Brilliant guy, really, really swell, and he's so well connected that he always ends up pulling all of the right people into the conversations online, so I feel connected in.
I also recommend Swift on security. Swift is really
What's that? Was it
Swift on security?
Swift on security? Yeah, the Taylor Swift, yeah, Swift on security, yes. My theory is that's Dan Kaminsky. Yes. So nobody knows who that really is, but that was funny at first, and now it's actually so good that you follow it for the security stuff. If only DevOps Borat could do that for DevOps, but I guess he would be a psychology expert now, because DevOps isn't really about doing anything. It's about being empathetic with other people and corporate culture and hugs and things like that. At one point, it was about operating things, but that seemed to pass. So now I see all these DevOps conferences, and they have talks about, team building and psychology. It's not like you don't have to build teams, and you can't be a psychopath at work, right? All that's clear, but these concepts of like what the effects of understanding empathy are on your team, right? If I want to hear a talk about that, I'm going to hear a professional at a psychology or sociology conference about that, not an engineer espousing science they may or may not understand. So I feel like they should get back to Chef or something, whatever they're doing. Like, how to automate a fleet of systems with a crappy language, Ruby. So, picking fights. Anybody? Ruby? So.
Scaling numbers expressed in per day or per month.
Oh, scaling numbers. Scaling numbers expressed in per day or per month. I've said before that like numbers are per second, all right? Sadly, distances are in meters. We fucked that up pretty bad. But yeah, all numbers should be in per second numbers. I think that there are times where those numbers get so small that it helps to put them in frames of reference, like, yeah, something happens twice every 6 minutes. Because no one can mentally translate that very, very small per second number, but it should always be in per second numbers, otherwise you can't relate them together. Yeah, but especially if it's like, I do 1 billion things a year. It's like, yeah, okay, well, that's... Yeah, so, or 1 billion things a minute, right? I mean, I think per minute numbers are the real evil ones, because, I mean, what's the point? Per day, that makes sort of sense. I don't know. How many people here do CrossFit? Just a whole bunch of hands. It's like this weird technology craze. Everybody I know who is like starting to do CrossFit ends up being like an engineer. I don't know what's going on. I started it and I just get fatter every time I go, and I hate it. So all this like CrossFit's awesome, you should go. It's all lies. It's horrible, horrible, horrible thing. Don't do it, or do it and hate it and talk about it. So you can share. Monitoring. I don't know. That goes into a corporate spiel. So it's all about the numbers. Monitor everything. If it's not monitored, it's not production. That sort of thing. There's too much marketing in monitoring, I would say. I think we don't do all that much marketing, but all the marketing we do is still adding to too much marketing and monitoring. People do such shit monitoring everywhere. You go to an organization, it's like, I try to come in and I think our tool is eons ahead of what is available today, but it doesn't really matter because they're not doing anything at all. Like, they don't even know their machines are on. They don't check. Literally, they don't. It's like, is your website working? And they're like, I don't know, let me load it on the browser. And that's the test, and and you'd be surprised. I mean, that is really common. 50% of the companies we go into, 50% of the companies we go into know what monitoring is. But if we take a survey of like some random ass companies, they just don't do anything. They just assume that once they've deployed something that it's on, and the cloud should tell you that that's unlikely. So, I don't know. There's also the whole Amazon thing. So Amazon, I think they aligned their cluster-wide reboot with Surge again this year. Because last year they had an outage, and the year before that they had an outage. It's like, when we set the dates for Surge next year, you should mark it on your calendar to have like your ops all hands right around that, because I'm sure Amazon will do that again. Yeah. OpenStack. Yeah, that's kind of funny. So, I don't know. I mean, everybody knows the Apache way. They're familiar with Apache. It has some challenges with the way they do governance, and there's other open source projects and cultures around open source. It's like OpenStack did extensive research on the worst possible way to form governance and compilation of components so that none of them would ever work together, and even when they did, they would never achieve an actual use case for a customer. So I know people run OpenStack. That's where it ends. I mean, they sort of run OpenStack and boot things, and they hate themselves for it. Anybody here happy with OpenStack when they run it? No? Okay, all right. It's like you could have the floor for 5 minutes, we'll laugh at you. Yeah, I don't know. There's all the technology is horrible. So I'll not keep everybody really long. I'll tell you a story of, it's very sad. It's very sad, it's very funny, and I can tell it because it all happened to me. And this would be like laughing at someone else, which is not a good thing to do, in spite. But I'm laughing at myself in spite. It was a horrible, horrible thing. It's like Gilligan's Island, so prepare yourself. So I travel a lot. I guess maybe 150,000 miles a year or so, and I stay in a lot of hotels, and I'm used to all of that. And I do a lot of day trips because I don't want to go for a long period of time. So when I was younger, I would fly to California in the morning from Maryland here, from DC. So I'd wake up at the ass crack of dawn, right, at 4 a.m., drive down, get on a 6 a.m. flight, land at 9 a.m., do a whole business day, have a dinner, take the 11 a.m. red eye back, and come back the next morning into Dulles at 7 a.m. and then drive an hour and a half home. And I do that once or twice a month. It's December 18th, about 5 years ago, and I have a meeting December 18th in the evening, so I drive down to Dulles at 4 a.m. I'm only going to be gone for 27 hours, so hop into hourly parking, get off, get on the plane, go over, have a great day. The snow is coming, so I'm really glad I'm leaving that night. And I do my dinner, actually bail out of the dinner early just in case I need to catch an earlier flight. So I do standby on an earlier flight, and that flight is canceled. I'm like, shit. Turns out, December 22nd, I needed to close on my house here, and I didn't give power of attorney to my wife, so I actually needed to be here to do it. And thinking, okay, well, I'll figure out a way. You know, you can always travel. If you travel a lot, you just roll with it. My flight's canceled. Everybody's flight's canceled. The whole airport is shut down, basically, because half the planes are coming from the East Coast. That was the big snowstorm that wiped out like the whole East Coast for a week and a half. And I'm on Virgin America, which I don't fly anymore. And I'm in line, and the woman behind the counter, I only say this dearly, such an incompetent bitch. So she mistakenly unreserves my ticket off the flight trying to move me to another flight, and she unbooked me. So she had to rebook me into the system. Instead of moving me to another flight, she had to get me a new ticket. It was January 18th, and the next ticket available from Virgin was January 4th. And it was like, well, that's not gonna fucking work, right? So she's like, well, I don't really know what to do. And I was like, well, you can get your manager, because that's what you're gonna do. So the manager came out, they really apologized. I couldn't figure out anything to do. And it was like 45 minutes. And you learn after a while that yelling at people doesn't ever work, right? These therapy sessions work. Standing up and telling people works. This is why AA exists. This is why user meetups exist. You go there and you tell them how you lost all your data on ButterFS, and you have big hugs and you go for drinks. And those are the things. It's yelling at the ButterFS developers. That's probably why the code looks the way it does. They've been yelled at all their life. So I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking. All right, I cannot get back to the East Coast. I pop up United, no. Delta, no. I want to go somewhere in the United States that's closer to home, that no one will want to leave to go where I'm going, right? So I want to go somewhere where the egress pipe is going to be open. Fort Lauderdale, Florida sounds good. It's warm, no snow, and no one there, they sure as hell don't want to go north, right? So I fly into Fort Lauderdale the next morning. I get a hotel room, fly out the next morning, land at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and flight's canceled from there to BWI. I was flying back to BWI. Flight's canceled, and I'm like, well, fuck it, I can't get a flight now. I'll figure out something, but what I'm gonna do right now, because I'm stressed out, is I'm going to have like a 2-pound steak, because that's what you do. I'm gonna have a really expensive glass of wine and a 2-pound steak. So I pop open the app, find the best steakhouse that I can find, Shula's, at the Westin Resort in Fort Lauderdale. And I've got a lot of Starwoods points, so I go over there, have this delicious steak, go back to the airport, because it's always better to do things in person. No credit card. I lost my credit card at Shula's. It's just like, oh, fuck me, right? This is horrible. So I can't get a flight. So I get a flight the next day at 7 a.m., 8 a.m. to North Carolina, closer to home, getting closer, right? So I go back to the Westin. They don't have my credit card. It's gone. And I'm checking into the Westin, and there's a wedding going on there. And I'm tired, right? It's the 19th now. It's only a couple days left. My wife's at home. She's worried. It's snowing like crazy. It's like 3 feet of snow, and I have 3 young daughters that can't shovel. My wife, they're just, it's horrible, right? So I'm getting that from, they're nice about it, but I'm feeling really guilty. And I'm standing in line, and another crazy fucking woman walks in, and her car is like stuck in valet. And she is the sassiest woman in the room, certainly, but at that point in my entire worldview. And she's like, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you people. You're like, I've been waiting out there all the time. Like, I want to talk to everybody. I want to talk to your manager. Get the manager out here. She's screaming. And I'm a defeated person at this point. I have nothing to lose. So I walk over to her and I say, you're having a horrible time. I don't work here. I'm stuck in 2 days in travel. I have a wife at home, snowed in with 3 small children. I can't get home. But your problem seems so much more important than mine, I can at least let you cut in front of me in line. And she turned so red and then ran out. And it was great. So then I get up to the counter and the woman's like, I don't know who you are, but I like you. And I was like, okay. So I'm checking in and I notice this big sheet of paper with numbers all over it next to it. And this guy comes down, he's like, I think you gave me the wrong room. The room is occupied. And she's like, oh shit, okay, sorry, I'll get you another room, blah, blah, blah. So then she checks me in, and this is the graphic portion of this. So I go up, 4th floor, put the thing in, open the door, and there's a dude in black socks. That's it. Big guy in black socks. 6'1", larger than 6'1", black socks. And he's looking at me, and I'm tired. And you're so tired, you're just like, I look at him, I'm like, this is not my room tonight. And I close the door, and I go downstairs, and I come back. She's like, is there a problem? It's like, there's a naked man in my room. And it turns out that BWI is a Southwest hub, and they were all shut down. So they had to check in over 60 flight attendants into the Westin Resort Hotel, and their computers weren't working fast enough, so they wrote all of the room numbers they were going to go down, and then they manually fucked them all up when they entered them, right? So everybody in the hotel was all over the place. So then karma comes back and saves you and punishes you at the same time, it turns out. So I go down, and she's like, I'll take care of you. Don't worry. You're in room 110. And I was like, oh, okay. She's like, you can't take the elevator. You have to take the stairs to the 1st floor. And I was like, okay. She's like, which end, where is it? She's like, well, there's only 110 and 120. I'm like, oh, okay. It must be like conference rooms on that floor. No, it was the governor's suite. And I've been in a lot of big suites and things like that, but this was fucking amazing. It had 30 feet of private beach outside. You open the door, and it was a private beach. The bathroom is the biggest shower I've ever been in. It was like 12 by 18 shower. It was like, I don't know what kind of orgy you could have in there, but it was It's crazy. And I'm thinking, I'm in there and I'm like, well, it's like 11:30 p.m. at night. I take a fabulous shower. And she's like, you can have late checkout. I'll give you 6 p.m. I'm like, I have a 6:10 a.m. flight. So I wake up in the dark. I leave this magical suite that I don't get to enjoy. I got the shower, it was nice. I go back to the airport, hop on the plane, get to North Carolina. My flight to Dulles is canceled. This is where bad operational decisions were made. The closer you get to home, you don't go further away. So I'm there and they're canceled and the woman's like, I can get you on a connecting flight through Savannah, Georgia. It leaves in like 10 minutes. This is where time pressure happens, right? You're like, 10 minutes, okay, let's do it. So I jump on this like 20-seat plane, fly down to Savannah, Georgia, which is an international airport with 18 total gates. I get off the plane and there's no one working any of the gates in the airport. It's like they realized, oh, the country's shut down. Fuck it, I'm going home. So I land in the airport and like I know where my gate is, and the United, I was on United at that point. That even said it wasn't canceled. There's no one in the airport. So completely demoralized. United booth is not, the check-in counter's not there either. So I go over to another airline. And then they're like, I can't help you, you're with United. And I said, I told them a little bit of the story, and she was like, I'll do anything you want. You want me to drive you over to the hotel? And so she gave me all these like forms and stuff. It was nice. But I'm sitting in the hotel. I'm sitting in the airport, and I go to a bar, and of course they serve Bud and Bud Light, and that is it. You take one for the team sometimes. And I'm just getting there, getting a beer, and this guy walks by smoking a cigarette out in the airport. And I'm like, what the fuck? He's smoking a cigarette. And she's like, that's Savannah. You can smoke anywhere you damn well please. And I was like, I'm going to do this. Crack open my bag, pull out my travel humidor, light up an enormous stick, and I sit in the gate, and I just fill the whole place with smoke. And it was like one of those little satisfying moments. And it took me like 45 minutes to finish the cigar and my Bud Light. And then I went to the Aloft Hotel, I think, and spent the night there. And that was the sketchiest bar scene ever. The Ravens were playing. Nobody was a Ravens fan there. I was like in the corner. So, and they were pretty foul. So then I get back, so we're now on the 19th now. So I wake up on the 20th and go back to the Savannah airport, and they fly me into Dulles, which is fantastic. Finally land. Nobody in the airport. It's like only a few kind of commuter flights are able to get in there, and it's the 20th. And I parked in hourly parking. So if you can kind of imagine the failure scenarios of this, of what can happen when you park in hourly parking, well, it clearly wasn't, it was like $140, but that's not the bad part of parking in hourly parking when you have 3.5 feet of snow that have fallen and no one else in hourly parking when the plows come. So I had 6-foot ice embankments all around my Tundra. I have a big truck. So there was another 2.5 hours that I spent having them shovel out the front of my car and tow it out of the spot that they had impacted it in. And then I got to drive home. And that was it. And my wife's like, oh, it's great that you're home. You made it in time. Everything's good. And I just wanted to basically shut down and die at that point. But the interesting part about all of that is that that entire journey of everything fucking going wrong and having moments of clarity and moments of happiness in that, it reminds me a lot of operational challenges. When every time you go to fix a piece of software, it turns out that the system that it's running on doesn't work either. And the only thing that actually gets it through us is not giving any fucks at all. Right? You're just like, this is my job. I'm just going to take it to the end. You always have to remember your goal. The mistake that I made was my goal was to get home as opposed to get closer to home. Right? So my goal should have been to get home, to get closer to home with every step. So going back to Savannah, I should have just rented a car. Could have rented a car and driven home. I would have been home a day earlier. But The interesting part is that I felt prematurely elated when I landed in Dulles. And then I saw the white iceberg that was my car and realized that I was absolutely fucked at that point. And that my wife couldn't come get me because she couldn't plow the car out of the, it was kind of bad. And keeping your goals in mind, like making sure that you can actually define what success looks like and stay focused on that success. And as you're making progress, make sure you're actually making incremental progress towards that success, because technology is like the land of rabbit holes. There are so many times we try to solve a problem and we're up shit's creek we don't even own, trying to look at this other problem where it's actually not relevant to our end goal. Yeah, so that was disaster porn that's not technology with a 6'2" dude in black socks. And, yeah, he's a big guy. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming to Surge. It should be awesome next year, and hope you all come back.
Bash people in the audience know that Bash 4249 just came out, and
The next Amazon rolling upgrade will happen now.
no, this is the last one was incomplete. People knew that. This appears to maybe complete.
Well, hopefully, I can only imagine why the Amazon.
Supposed to be updated sometime tonight.
Yeah, I can only assume that Amazon's rolling out outage was due to them passing environment variables through Zenboot or something like that. Hey, the world is ostensibly glued together with Perl and Bash. It's not Lisp. Yeah, well, it's a bad thing today. Yeah, so I would expect another rolling upgrade of some type. So anyway, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.